Bubba Wallace just cannot catch a break, and although there have been more than 2 weeks since his accident with Kyle Larson, the repercussions just cannot seem to stop. And one huge reason for that is the fact that the accident itself was truly a bizarre one. Although Wallace has apologized for his actions and said that he feels very sorry for how things turned out, that doesn't take away the fact that he is a reckless driver and needs to be dealt with properly. That is exactly what Michael Jordan, the owner of the 23XI racing team, did. But the co-owner Hamlin wasn't really happy about it. Is there trouble in paradise? Michael Jordan has decided to punish Bubba Wallace with $1 million for his actions. Yes, a whopping $1 million will be taken away from Bubba due to the fact that he crashed intentionally into Kyle Larson. Although this has not been made public, insiders say it happened. Wallace's move on Larson was truly unprovoked and uncalled for. Various experts and reporters like Kyle Petty called for Wallace's suspension to be applied to the rest of the season. This is something that, according to them, will teach the 23XI racing driver a lesson, rather than the one-race ban that he received for the Miami Motor Speedway. Many are wondering why this harsh penalty was given to Wallace by his own team. Well, the accident happened in the middle of the fight for drivers to enter the championship four in Vegas. This meant that although Wallace was still part of this fight, his crash into Larson meant that he ruined two drivers' chances to enter the championship fight, and he almost ruined Christopher Bell's chance too. Bubba Wallace makes around $2.2 million per year, and this $1 million penalty is nearly 50% of his salary, which is truly a massive amount of money. Rest assured that Michael Jordan did this for a good reason, and this will definitely teach Bubba a lesson the next time he decides to screw around and mess other drivers' races. When Hamlin tried to confront Michael Jordan about the penalty, he was told to step out of the building. 23XI told me to get out of the building for the next 2 weeks and go concentrate on getting a championship for myself. Unfortunately, this won't be possible during the last race in Phoenix, given the fact that Chastain's move, which was labeled as both a crazy and brave one, took Hamlin out of contention. But this isn't the only time that Wallace is losing money because of Kyle Larson. 3 years before he received the hefty penalty of $1 million from his owner, Michael Jordan, Larson's major accusation forced Bubba to lose $50,000. At that time, $50,000 wasn't a sum of money to mess around with. During the 2019 season, Larson accused Bubba Wallace of deliberately spinning and raising a caution flag at the Texas Motor Speedway. The caution directly impacted other drivers, with Larson being one of them. Moreover, Wallace has also accepted that his actions weren't really suitable for that race and that they were deliberate as well. Wallace's interview after the race in 2019 was truly an interesting and revealing one, with him saying, "I learned it from Keselowski and Logano. I'm not the only one to do it. I am racing for myself, not for Larson, not for Chevrolet at that moment." Wallace was fined on the basis of Section 10.8, with him being found guilty of intentionally causing or attempting to cause a caution period. 3 years later, Wallace is looking at a penalty that might end his career due to the fact that he is paid just $2.2 million. It's not his salary that's the problem, it's the heftiness of the penalty, and it seems like Wallace will reconsider whether or not he will be a part of NASCAR in the future if this penalty sees the light of day. What's even more interesting is the fact that Wallace's $1 million penalty won't be applied by NASCAR but by his team, due to the lieu of fines that are levied by 23XI Racing. Hamlin spoke about Wallace's actions at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, adding, "He understands where I stand, where the team stands, and the values that we want to present on the racetrack, and he just didn't represent it that well last week." With this penalty, it just goes to show that Wallace's place isn't really in NASCAR if he plans to continue with shenanigans like the one in Las Vegas. What doesn't go in his favor is something that he said in his first interview after Las Vegas, saying that every action that involves chipping other drivers should be penalized the same. "I totally accepted the penalty and the repercussions that came from my actions. I talked to Steve O'Donnell and I talked to Phelps and I said, hey, I'm good with being the example. If we can keep this consistent moving forward, because it's happened multiple times this year and it's something that may still continue to happen for other drivers down the road. I definitely learned my lesson, but we have to be consistent, no matter if it's here at Martinsville or if it's at Daytona or Talladega. We've got to keep it consistent across all the boards and across all the series." It was a good conversation. It goes without saying that these hopes of Wallace are in vain, and his expectation that everybody will be punished for actually racing the way they should race is just pure fantasy. If his rule goes by, then we might have races where there won't even be drivers in the first place, given the fact that everybody will be penalized for, well, actually driving. Kyle Petty has been really furious with Bubba Wallace and the way he has been acting lately. According to him, the penalty that Wallace received is truly a joke, and he should be handed a penalty that will definitely hurt him and make him think about situations like this again. It seems like this narrative prevails in Michael Jordan's mind, with a difference that he can only impose financial fines and not ban drivers directly from participating in races. He should have been suspended for the rest of the year. He drives for Denny Hamlin, who has been vocal about safety. His teammate Kurt Busch, the only reason he's in the number 45 car is because his teammate's career was all but ended because of an accident in this car, and the drivers have vocalized that it needs to be safer. He turns a guy in the right rear into the outside wall intentionally. Steering brake? That's laughable. Turns a guy into the outside wall, then walks across the racetrack. First, you're intentionally wrecking somebody. That's a suspension. He's walking across the racetrack and cars are going by him on both sides. That's not safe. That should be another suspension. Physically confronts a driver, shoves him. That's a physical confrontation. If I do that on the sidewalk, I'm in handcuffs somewhere. So he physically confronts this driver, shoves an official, doesn't get in an ambulance, walks back to the pits, and then stands and boldface tells a fib. The lesson should be the rest of the year. Just the rest of the year. That's just me. According to Wallace, he has learned his lesson from the Las Vegas race, and he had a conversation with Kyle Larson. On top of that, Wallace spoke about what he has learned from this incident, saying, "I've got to think before you do. Going back and looking from a 10,000-foot view definitely could have handled everything way differently. I put myself in a bad light. I put our team in a bad light. It's just something that I'm not proud of. Moving on, moving forward, you are not allowed to make that mistake." On top of that, Wallace said that he spoke with his team and that they are understanding about the situation he found himself in. They were understanding the heat of the moment type things, but they were very adamant about how we needed to handle those 5 seconds later. You need to think. Like I said earlier, you need to think before you do. That was the biggest thing. They still support me and we're here. We just have to go out and continue to build this team up. Therefore, it's safe to say that Wallace's penalty will truly be challenging for him and his career in NASCAR. There is a real chance that we might see the last of Wallace regarding his presence in NASCAR for all the good reasons. With that being said, what do you think about Jordan's penalty that is supposed to be placed on Bubba's head? Do you think that the 2311 racing driver deserves this kind of penalty? Or do you think that it's just too harsh?